And by the way, this is a good point, time to once again point out that there were two demented candidates that were set to go off against each other. Biden is a Democrat, Trump is a Republican. And of course, Biden stepped down because his form of dementia, David, I've said this to you many times, is in some ways more upsetting to people than Trump's form of dementia. And as somebody who's dealt with demented people for a lot in my life, I could tell you I've dealt with both types. One is the raving lunatic who, like you said, wakes up this morning, you have no idea what he or she is going to be railing about. And it could be completely devoid of reality. And the other is the one who's just losing control of memory and speech and can't get it together to rail. And I stand by this. If Biden had been the other kind of demented, he would be reelected. If he had been ranting and railing and cussing and saying stupid things like Donald Trump, the country would have voted for him. I stand by that, David. I really. So this gets to the other issue that you've been talking about. Let's bring it to local politics. Like, what statement were the voters making in 2024? You've said a couple times in today's conversation that voters made a statement in 2024 and that the United States is having to live by that statement. And I don't believe the voters voted to have Elon Musk take apart the federal government following the blueprint of Project 2025. Oh, no. If you recall, Donald Trump, for all his dementia, knew enough to distance himself from Project 2025. I remember right-wing MAGA commentators on the internet, on podcasts, rolling their eyes at Democrats who pointed out during the convention how dangerous Project 2025 is. And they would say, what part of Donald Trump says he has nothing to do with Project 2025 are you not understanding? So he also said he was going to be a champion of a woman's right to choose. Oh my God, I can't even get let the states decide. We haven't seen that shoe drop yet, David. So I'm not certain that the United States electorate, and you know I got my issues with voters, particularly those in Chicago. I'm not sure the United States electorate was actually ratifying all the insane things Donald Trump is doing, including his rhetorical war on Canada, Greenland, Mexico, Panama. Am I leaving anybody out? So your thoughts about that? How much of this did the electorate want when they voted for Trump?
I think a lot of things are happening right now, particularly vis-a-vis like the federal government and its grant making and some of these federal agencies. No, people were definitely not voting for that, right? In part because our like ridiculously gullible media apparatus in this country accepted this preposterous assertion that the Trump administration had nothing to do with Project 2025, even though they've been working hand in hand with him, and the entire right-wing movement had invested like billions of dollars in 4 years creating a blueprint for what they were going to do when they got back into power, including like a pool of staffers who would fill these positions. And then Trump was like, I got nothing to do with it. And then the media started fact-checking Democrats. Do you remember this? They'd be like, PolitiFact says, 7 Pinocchios because Trump just, technically Trump's not part of Project 25. But I was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
It's great, man. So, no, did people know the exact content of every single thing they were voting for? No. What they did know, Ben, what any sentient voter who was 18 years old in 2024 knew and had lived through and witnessed was that Trump and his allies had tried to overthrow the American constitutional order live on national television in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
That is
culminating in a attempted sacking of the Capitol, trying to murder multiple members of Congress, including the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, and seeing that Trump backed this. He unleashed that mob on the Capitol. He put together a bunch of fraudulent electors to try to overturn the election result, right? Like, he committed a variety of crimes against the United States that were nullified by the Supreme Court. And every single voter in the United States, even people who were 14 years old in 2020, should have been capable of seeing those events, processing them, and thinking to themselves, like, I may not like Kamala Harris, or I may actually even agree with some of Donald Trump's policies, but I cannot vote for someone who doesn't respect the peaceful transfer of power and doesn't respect the basic norms and institutions that make it possible for us to transfer power from one political party to another peacefully.
Yeah.
So the message that the voters sent to one another, to Donald Trump, to his allies, to the people staffing this administration, was that we don't care.
Yeah.
Like there's no line that could have been crossed that was like clearer than what happened in late 2020 and early 2021. Now he's been doing crazy authoritarian things since the day he descended the escalator, including saying on all three of his campaigns for the presidency that he wouldn't respect the election results if they didn't go his way. Right. And over time, it's just like this behavior has been normalized.
Yeah.
And it's been normalized to the extent that it just didn't turn off enough of the electorate to be decisive. And that is like, we bear responsibility for that. Like we had a free choice to make in 2024. It was a free and fair election, under the, caveat, electoral college, all this stupidity, gerrymandering, but like within the confines of the system was a free and fair election. And we chose the autocrats. We did it with open eyes. We knew what we were doing. The voters who pressed the button for him, they knew what they were doing. They know what they had seen in 2020. For all this, like, oh, they were brainwashed by right-wing media. Like every single human being in America has access to the New York Times, and they chose not to read it.
Wow.
I just, I don't know what to make of that anymore. Like that's what we did. And that is part of what is causing this foreign policy crisis, right? Where other democracies are like, man, we're on our own. Yeah, maybe maybe Pete Buttigieg or Gretchen Whitmer gets into power in 28, but like we can't promise that the American voters are not going to do this again in 2032, 2036, you name it, right? Like half of the country openly backs malignant authoritarians who tried to overthrow the government. And there's just no two ways around it, man. Like that's what happens.
Yeah. You're right. I can't argue with you. You put it that way. I can't argue with you.